Good afternoon, everyone. It's really nice to be here and welcome fellow panelists. So we are going to talk about adopting technology faster to minimize impacts on productivity and what lessons have we learned. Fun topic. So technology development is moving right now at a very fast pace. So we're probably here to explore a topic that definitely sits at the heart of modern mining operations: how to accelerate the adoption of new technologies while minimizing impact on productivity. As we all appreciate, we work in an industry where efficiency and outputs are critical, and the pressure to innovate is constant. So, yet, as many of us know, introducing new systems can sometimes create short-term challenges which ripples through operations. So today we will dive into how mining companies are navigating this balancing act, adopting technology faster, smarter, and with minimal impact to the production. So together with our fellow panelists, leaders in operations, technology, service-related areas, R&D and innovation, we will unpack lessons learned from both site perspective and technology and broader industry programs, and how we empower teams to lead change, embed new technologies into everyday workflows, and ultimately drive sustainable productivity gains. So let's get started. Let's begin by exploring the critical role of frontline workers in shaping the speed and success of technology adoption. Obviously, their engagement, trust, and feedback often determine whether new systems are implemented successfully on sites. So my first question would be, how do frontline workers shape the speed and success of technology adoption on site? So if we can start probably from Kellen.
Sure.
That would be great.
Yeah, no problem. So the engagement of the front line is probably one of the most essential pieces to us as a software developer, because really you need to build something that's useful and usable for the workforce. They need to want to use the tool, and they have to be able to use the tool. And so engagement of that front line is critical. And if you look at the 4 core domains that we focus on, it's 4 completely different audiences. It's, say, a travel team in workforce logistics. It's health and safety coordinators. It's individuals that work in governance, risk, and compliance, or it's somebody that's responsible for resource disclosures. So it could be a facilities engineer, a competent person. It could be a health and safety professional, or that travel team. And what we find is that if we bring the frontline workers into that discussion up front before we design and develop, we see not only do we get the information that we wouldn't have as a software development company, but we also see this transition of a potential resistor turn into an advocate. And then when you have those advocates, you start to see that immediate acceleration that comes along with the engagement of the front line. So it's an absolutely critical part for a software developer.
Thank you very much, Kellen. So Andrew, would you like to add anything?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I think another piece would be for not the software but technology in general would be around the perceived value for the front line. If it's the front line is the pivot point of the whole process. If it's not happening at the front line, the innovation will fail. So it's around the perceived value that the front line has for that product, the ease of use, and their ownership of it. I think your point there around getting involved at the beginning, ownership comes through involvement. So we had an example where we were rolling out an inspection process, and the operators came up with actually adding the data verbally rather than by typing it in on a digital thing, which got a lot more buy-in because actually we're helping them to make it easy to use. Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew. So definitely that Yeah, it is very clear that frontline workers play a pivotal role in driving technology adoption. So thank you for your insights. Matt, from your experience, your practical operational experience, what are some common barriers frontline teams face when new technologies or software are introduced on sites?
Yeah, thank you for the... Can you hear me all right? Hello. Yep, there we go. Yeah, coming from an operational background myself, I've been a frontline worker for 10 years. I'm a mining engineer now, but I've been in the industry for 16 years, 10 as an operator, 3 as a trainer assessor, and 3 as an engineer. So I've seen all sides, facets of the front line, and I think what we heard from Whitehaven and Hexagon was all about collaboration and being transparent from management, being upfront and honest as to why we are implementing this new technology. Kellen made a good point about some initial resistance, but you can turn that resistance into a positive outcome. I think with explaining what the actual process is that we're doing, whether it's like automation loading, automation drilling, things like that, that's not necessarily taking the worker off the job, but there is a perceived threat within the industry that it could be taking away from their job, I guess. But once you get past that point and you realise we're actually doing it to make the mine more the productivity, drive productivity. Specifically, I'll get to some specific points in the next questions, but yeah, that's basically it in a nutshell, sort of just that collaboration, trust and transparency.
Yeah, definitely all critical ingredients, so totally agree, thank you. Karl, let's explore how companies can better engage frontline teams and empower them to lead change from within to become real champions internally. So I'm sure you have some examples to share with us.
I mean, with a company like FLS, where we advances in our technologies and our new equipment and things we're trying to do better than anyone else. And when you get onto a site, it's almost like, you need to get the buy-in from the guys, and they need to believe in what you're trying to. Otherwise, you just sound like another salesperson coming along. There's another, let's do this, let's do that. And for us is to sit down with them on site and really explain. And the big thing about testing things is like we can run pilot plants. You can run pilot technology. You can start small. You can then basically take that data and actually show. But then you also have to be careful with, you can have some small gains now, but it's almost like leaders will take that and build that into your next production schedule, build that into your next year's production plan. So you really need to sit down and plan everything out, where you're going to get your gains, where you're going to get your trial periods, and then adopt it with a speed and as fast as you can, because the longer you take, the more money you also lose, so you don't always get the benefit by taking too long, and everyone doesn't want to be first. They want to be first to be second as well. So bridging that transition, you can actually make a lot more money, but you have to be very careful with your planning and getting people to adopt what you say they will.
Thank you, Karl. Yes, agree. Engagement really plays an important role when it comes to technology adoption. So I know we spoke quite a bit about the AI yesterday. We had a couple of sessions on that, but still I would like to ask Matt, our operational guy, the question, how is AI helping mining companies accelerate the adoption of new technologies across operations? And if you have any examples, please share with us. And obviously the definition of AI is different for different probably companies, people, etc. So if you could maybe clarify your definition, that would be great.
It's the buzzword of 2025, isn't it, AI? We, as a mine site, I work at Ernest Henry for Evolution. We're not particularly using AI at this point in time, but we know it's coming. We know that we use a lot of Deswick. I don't know if you're familiar with Deswick, CAD and Scheduler, so we collaborate with them a lot. They do have some AI tools in the pipeline. Obviously, we're not currently using them, but the amount of time I spend in my job as a 3-month planning and scheduling engineer is the amount of data I pour over, and try and make sense of. If something like AI can do that in 10 seconds, and it takes me 3 or 4 hours, what can my time be better spent doing for the operation? I think that's where we will be headed. So an engineer likes to solve problems, and then sometimes our use of that time is spent doing other things. When AI will be able to we'll be able to adopt that technology soon. And I think even in a drill and blast space as well, there's some low hanging fruit there we can potentially exploit when that comes along. So watch this space with Deswick, and I think it's going to turn the short term scheduling and planning engineers role into a much more enjoyable one.
Thank you very much. That's really interesting. So let's turn our attention right now to the people, supervisors and crews, who play, I reckon, the pivotal role in translating strategy into action. So successfully preparing these teams for technology transitions is essential to minimizing downtime and ensuring adoption is both fast and effective. So I would like to ask my fellow panelists, and maybe Matt, I will start with you. What strategies have proven effective in preparing crews and supervisors for technology transitions? And again, if you have any examples, real-life examples to share, that would be great.
Yeah, we've got some drilling constraints at the moment. I work in a big sub-level cave. It's very reliant on drill stocks. And in the actual ore body, our drill stocks have been diminished over the last couple of years. It's not as a result of the poor drilling drills, but it's actually a result of doing more non-productive drilling as the mine expands further underground. So you've got ventilation risers and ore passes that we're drilling and blasting. That takes resources away from the actual ore body itself. We've actually had this software on site. We use Sandvik drills, and we've had software on site where you can automation drill. We've had that for 4 years, and we've never used it once. And so now we're at a point in time where it's actually like we've got to use it over a shift change. So when day shift turns to night shift and vice versa, night shift to day shift, we can get those operators in to use a simulator to actually be up on the surface in a, like a simulated environment, doing that sort of drilling. So I think, from a supervisory point of view, it's about sort of you getting tugged in both directions. You're getting pressure from the management saying, well, drill stocks are low. And then you're also getting the operators who are saying, well, we've never used this technology. We've had it for 4 years. Why are we doing it now? So I guess from a supervisory point of view, it's just about sort of being open and honest about what's going on with the actual, the drill stocks. Why do we need them? Why do we need to embrace this technology? Some of the older operators or the more experienced operators might resist at first, but what we've seen in the past is that very quickly they learn to enjoy it and they embrace it and take it on.
Thank you. That's really good one. We will talk about collaboration, communication a bit later, but I guess you touch on a very important ingredient in technology adoption. Andrew, what role does trust and communication play in frontline adoption of new systems?
It's funny, isn't it? We're doing a talk on technology and we're talking about people and trust and communication, so obviously it's critical. Trust, if the technology is perceived as being surveillance, you'll get resistance. If it's clear that it makes sense in terms of productivity or improving safety, then you'll get adoption. So I think trusting that you're not surveilling me is important. Two-way communication, it's about communicating the why and the what, but also hearing the why not. So it's easy to communicate top-down, like this is why we're doing this. Hearing the why not's important. And finally, that supervisor role is so important because they're the bridge between what the company's trying to do and what the real frontline's experiencing. So it's important that the supervisors understand what's happening.
Yeah, so you touched on a very important thing, like open communication. So people obviously don't like being told what to do. So you really need to explain why. So that's probably one of the key points. So yeah, thanks Andrew. Next question, Kellen. What are, from your perspective, most critical skills crews need to adopt new technologies quickly and effectively? What are those critical skills to have?
Yeah, so I think that The most important skill sets that we see in our most successful customers, number one is going to be adaptability. Can they actually make that leap? So you're talking about a pretty traditional industry. So moving from paper-based logs to digital workflow can be a big deal. Some of the examples that we'll see will be a travel team moving from these uber complex spreadsheets to a system that does all the flight bookings and accommodation bookings for them and then has features in there like automated workflow, robots, so they can focus on the other inefficiencies that they've never had time to get to. On the resource disclosure side, you're talking about processes of siloed data gathering and approvals, moving to a digital workflow that goes from a stockpile all the way up to a corporate entity with all the different checks and balances that need to happen. So adaptability is critical. Problem solving, so the ability to, if you look at it, most implementations, I'd say all implementations, things aren't going to be perfect out of the gate. So to have a team in place that can, as you're adopting a technology, notice some of the imperfections, develop a quick workaround, and at the same time escalate that to a program team so it can be dealt with, is incredibly important. And then back to, this isn't telling anybody anything new, appreciation for data and awareness of data. So understanding that the information that is collected and the information that goes into a system needs to be accurate, it needs to be relevant, but then on the output side, they need to understand how to interpret that data and figure out what is the data trying to tell me.
Are there any particular strategies to develop the type of skills for crews? Are you helping companies actually to develop the right skills for their workers?
Well, this goes back to, how do they acquire talent? What kind of skills are they looking for? I think that an organization going through a major digital transformation needs to look at the workforce and get an understanding of, do they have the foundation in place in order to build out their digital strategy? So that goes back to the people that they're hiring and I guess how they're training. And one of the things that we also see is training can't be a one-stop. Like you have to continually invest in your people. You can't expect that, some training up front is going to continue to deliver the results you're looking for. You got to continually come back to the importance of these new digital solutions.
Thank you very much. That's actually a really good breakdown, quite clear. So now let's explore how mining companies can ensure that technology rollouts are not only innovative but also practical, aligned with real operational challenges, site-specific constraints, and obviously existing workflows. Successful integration obviously depends on thoughtful planning and collaboration across multidisciplinary teams, as we all know. So, Kellen, again, question to you probably. How do you ensure that technology rollouts are aligned with actual operational challenges?
Yeah.
You don't come with a solution to the company which doesn't need to be solved.
That's right. So we need to make sure that our solutions are solving for real world challenges. And really that means that we must be working with that front line and making sure that the solutions are co-designed, tested, and piloted in the environments that they're intended to be used in with the individuals that are actually going to be using the solutions. And if you look at the where do you start from, you need to start from a strong business case that is anchored in those operational problems that you're trying to solve for. When you're developing that business case, you need to make sure that you are tying it back to safety incidents, downtime, equipment failure. And in order to do that, the solution and the business case needs to be tied back to specifics. So actual data logs, maintenance logs, safety incident reports. And that by tying that back to a particular piece of data, you can create the baseline at which you will essentially consider a system to be live, but then it'll allow you to continually revisit that to make sure that you're seeing incremental improvements beyond the initial deployment.
Thank you very much. Matt, any operational insights on the same question?
Yeah, I guess it's about, for us, identifying the bottleneck of the operation. And the bottleneck for us at this point in time, or two years ago, was that over shift change, we hoist all of our dirt. So from the crusher, goes through the conveyor system and hoists up to the surface. Over shift change, the hoist wasn't going because it wasn't able to be supplied the ore. So we basically worked out if we had the automation loaders in place with people up on top over shift change. So obviously when we do a shift change from day shift to night shift, we fire the shots. Nobody's underground. So when there's nobody underground, you can't move any dirt. And then so we've got the automation loaders in like a sea container up the top, and that was able to basically feed into the hoist and keep the hoist running over those shift changes, enabling us to be much more profitable organisation. And during the first financial year, we actually attributed $16.8 million to the business. So it paid itself off in the first month, basically. So, yeah.
Great example. Thank you for sharing that. It is clearly a very balancing act, but right now I would like actually to ask a little bit tougher question, and hopefully Karl will be able to give some insights on that. So what happens when things actually don't go as planned? Let's reflect maybe on some of those slightly tougher moments, and the question would be, what lessons have you learned from rollouts that didn't integrate well with existing workflows? Do you have any of those to share with the audience?
Yeah, because when you want to be successful, you need to be seen as advancing without impacting your business in a negative way, like loss of throughput or anything like that. So we had a case where we've integrated control rooms into the site, into like a SIOC, like a site asset integrated control room center. And with that also came all the digitalization of the process. And it meant that everyone from the operator right to the CEO can see what's happening in the plant. Mm. Now, on paper, it was a brilliant idea. We're going to make a lot of money. We've saved a lot of money. But the problem is, every time the CEO got 10 or 15 minutes spare, he would go and look at the screen. He would go and call the COO. Why is the crusher on that little box on the left-hand side red? The COO will then pick up the phone and he will call the general manager on site. The general manager will then go and call the process manager on site. The process manager will go and call the superintendent on site. And then, so you can just imagine how the guys in the control room actually felt. It was chaos. We had to switch certain things off and really made sure that, what we actually got was something that did save us a lot of money, did create a lot of collaboration in a good way, but we didn't need the collaboration to come up and down the top. And so we overcame it, but that's some of the type of pitfalls. You think you're doing a good thing, but it can turn ugly very, very quickly.
Well, really appreciate the honesty here. Yes, sometimes it's very hard to share these type of examples, with a large group of people, but it's really interesting. Thank you. So now let's talk about how we navigate the tension between innovation and on-the-ground realities. And Karl again. So how do you balance the need for innovation with the realities of site-specific constraints? Also, if you have any examples to share, would be awesome.
So again, when you've got new technology and people is not really in a space to adopt it, the best is for us, what we've seen is to take a side stream and do some test work on site and get the real actual data. So it all starts first up when you get the samples. You can get drill core samples, you can send it to our labs. We will then take it, we will run simulations, we will run pictures, we will run graphs and showing you how good it is. But sometimes someone will use something like tap water and not site process water. Those things happens in the past, so you can get different results. Best thing for us is we put a small pilot plant in, teach the operators that's going to operate this, show them what to do, and then get the results back from them. You also have to be sure that with enough training and understanding of what the equipment needs to do, you can't just go and put something on site, say, here we go, take a sample there, send that in a bag to us. So it's taking the whole process, going through everything, because if you're going to do that, the guys are just going to take samples everywhere and it's going to be worth nothing. But we've seen in cases where we spend a bit of time with them, we use their downtime to train them, they shift changeover times, like Matt said before. There's always times where you can actually do something without impacting the production process. So for us, that works really, really well.
Thank you very much. Really interesting insights. So I would like to talk a little bit more about training and capability building for technology adoption. So Matt, if I can ask you, what role does training play in ensuring a smooth transition during technology adoption on mine sites?
Yeah, huge. Training is everything. You've got to get the right training to train the operators, but we've also got to train the trainers as well. So as a former trainer assessor myself, having guys like Orica come out with their wireless blasting technology, for example, or the Sandvik guys with their automation, as I mentioned earlier, they've got to be able to train, us as trainer assessors, and also then pick out the most experienced operators on the crew to then train. Usually they're the most experienced, like if you've got a loader, for example, and you've got a unit upstairs, a simulator, basically that's a very, very sort of similar situation. The levers and everything, the screen that you're looking at is very similar to what they are already doing underground. So then it's about training them, training the trainers, and then flowing down through the crews as well. So yeah, absolutely important to get it like spot on right from the start.
Thank you. So how can training programs be designed to minimize operational downtime while still being effective? Karl, if you would like to touch on that.
Yes. So when you start commissioning something and when you start building, that's where training really starts. And now there's cases where people come and go into, the turnover in mine sites is pretty high at some point in time. So the more people you can train, the more, you can actually get sure that the knowledge is embedded. But like what we've done is when we start building things in FLS, we might build a crusher for a client, and then to actually grab the operators, the maintainers, although they're not part of the project, we try and bring them in on their cross shifts, on everywhere. And then we also then got our formal training sessions we do in a classroom. We've got the e-learning packages we roll out with them. And with these type of things, you can actually run through everything and then just make sure you tick all the boxes as well, because if you miss something, you miss some group in a process like that, it can cost you.
Thank you very much, Karl. As you all know, one of the most critical challenges in mining technology adoption is the ability to balance constant pressure to innovate and maintaining production targets, and also to be involved sometimes in research and development projects. So this tension often defines the pace and success of implementation, and understanding how to manage it is actually key to long-term gains. So, Karl, I would like to ask a question. So, how to manage the tension between maintaining production and revenue targets whilst companies still would like to trial new technologies on site?
Yes, that's why you need to look at the planning process. So some of these things really need to be planned in, because if you are going to have a drop in production whilst you're trialing something, so sometimes if you advance this, you might have to take, one step back and then 2 steps forward. But you need to plan these things around maintenance days, the mining. There could be like a mining downtime or something they need to do, some work underground. So you can have some then excess stockpile on the surface, but you really need to plan for if, and what you're going to do. So it's not just as like, let's trial this, and everyone needs to be aware of this is what can happen, this is what can do. Because, you might do something, and then at the end of the day, you've got a huge impact in your shipping line in the port. You might end up paying triple amount of money for demurrage or something there. So from my point of view is, plan this properly, do all the front-end loading work, and when you do it, everyone's aware of what's going on. And that does relieve the tension between like maintenance. Sometimes processing will do a trial, they never tell mining or maintenance or whatever, and that does cause a lot of tension. So open, honest, everyone knows, all the stakeholders involved, and take it from there.
Yeah, thanks. Definitely transparency plays a key role in here. Andrew, how do you communicate the long-term value of innovation to teams focused on short-term targets?
These teams want to see value. So it's got to be tangible. So, for example, this technology is going to reduce our inspection times by 15 minutes. So it's real and affects to them. We want to celebrate quick wins. We want to celebrate people who are stepping up and adopting. I think the other piece would be peer credibility. So, when peers communicate this is good, that's much more effective than an email from the CEO about his red box. We had an example where a contractor was adopting automated drilling and of autonomous rigs, and they were struggling, but another crew pointed out how well it was working, and that's what created the adoption. So I think peer communication is also powerful.
Thank you very much. So probably to wrap our conversation up, this is the last bit. I would like to talk about implementation and innovation and R&D programs. So my first question would be, what are the most valuable lessons learned from site-level implementations that others can apply? So maybe Kellen, if you can start, and Neville can follow on.
Sure. Probably first and foremost, given that we work across a number of asset-intensive industries, it's remembering that as you're developing products, industry context matters. So there's going to be differences in even the type of, and it's not just industry, it's industry and site context. We will see different challenges on a mine site that has FIFO operations versus one that doesn't. And that rolls from their needs in workforce management all the way into the health and safety platforms that they require. If we're working with energy companies, it's adhering to very strict and unique offshore safety protocols. If it's a linear infrastructure company, it's dealing with thousands of contractors on a daily basis. So making sure that you understand that industry context and site level context, but that then rolls into that second big lesson learned is making sure that you are engaging with that front line. They're ultimately going to be not only the users, but they're ultimately going to drive and decide whether a technology rollout is successful. Additionally, going back to what we talked about earlier, that need to utilize that front line and your best customers to co-design, test, and pilot in the environments that your technologies are intended for. And your best customer doesn't necessarily need to be the one that's spending the most money. It's the customer that's going to give you the swiftest, most honest feedback, so you can then roll that back into your development process. Karl told me a funny story before we got on this panel. He said he was working for a mining organization and he was making complaints to FLS, and next thing you know, they offered him a job. And now he's taken some of that feedback that he used to provide to FLS. He's taken that and developed systems inside of FLS. You can't get better context about where your solution is going to go than from your customer base, and then making sure that you're measuring adoption. You're not just measuring success from go live. You're continually going back and making sure that you're seeing those incremental gains, and then just making sure that you're managing change fatigue. That leadership is setting realistic expectations for what they're expecting to be the outcomes coming out of these systems, and making sure that they're rolled out in manageable stages. So I think those would be the most valuable lessons that we've seen.
Thanks, Kellen. That's really useful. Neville, so if you can possibly follow on, but also I would like to ask, how can industry-wide innovation programs, considering your very deep research and development background, how those programs support faster, smoother adoption on mine sites? So if you can touch on that.
All right, fantastic, thank you. I thought I'd maybe start with a little bit of context, just so that you get a perspective. I think that you can hear me. I can hear me coming back from the back. So a little bit of context just to give perspective on the couple of things that I've thought through. So I started my career as a plant operator on a mineral processing plant and working on smelters. And I thoroughly enjoyed night shift because it was a time when there was nobody around and I could sit and watch the process and I could understand what it was doing and I could spend time watching. I had a boss who came in. The company I was with loved innovation and loved trying new things. So anything that was new that popped up, we would try it. And he came in and said, look, I've got a whole lot of guys coming to try some stuff. Would you please look after them? And I think it was the sort of poison chalice. Would you look after them? I.e., make sure they're safe, make sure they're out of the way, make sure they don't do anything. And I worked with them and we had a hugely successful project. That then led me to get, always when these new projects were coming in, I would get asked, would you please work with these researcher teams on site as the operator to help them get samples or make things happen, etc. And it built an incredible interest in innovation and putting things on site and making it work. And I've probably babysat all of your technologies on night shift, and I've got to know all of them and built up a huge understanding of what makes things work and what makes things not work. And that ignited a passion, which then I went off to uni, studied, and then ended up running the company's R&D group for a number of years. And so my comments really come from that perspective of sort of what do I think has really been things that have made it work. And I've only got a minute, so I'm going to run through these fairly quickly, but we can catch up.
Take another one.
So one of the things that I found really interesting as I moved into an executive level was often people that are doing innovation or putting in projects have no idea of what the business strategy is and how their technology talks to the strategy and actually enables the strategy. In many ways, a lot of these technologies are not connected to the strategy at all. So there's no real business case, there's no real business understanding, there's no real business drivers. It's something that's interesting, or it's something, you understand your business and you understand how well you're doing your business and how you make money, but you have no concept of how this makes money for the client and why it's important to their strategy. So almost whenever I'm doing a piece of work, that's the first thing I look at. The second one is there are a number of enablers and derailers, and I put leadership in there, I put culture in there, I put capability development. These are sort of hygiene factors. These are things you've got to just get right, and yet they get ignored. So whenever I'm doing a technology project, I look at those, and really often I've said to people, don't do technology, go and get these things sorted out first, because you're wasting your money. Communicate. Often put stuff in, we only communicate the good news. I have a rule, bad news first. What isn't working? What's broken? What are we learning from it? How do we know that it's not working? How do we make... Whereas mostly you only get the good news. It goes to the exco, everything's green, and then you come to site and it's not. Phased approach. So Jim Collins, who says do little pilot studies, do little shots, make sure you're in the right track, make sure you know what you're doing, then send in the cannonball. So, it's ready, steady, aim, fire. Often I see ready, fire. And it's like we've blown the wrong thing apart. I'm a big fan of modular. I like to do modular things and scale out rather than scaling up, because often there's huge risk when you go from one scale to another. We just assume it's linear. It doesn't work. It's a disaster. Favorite one, leverage external expertise and partnerships. I was very fortunate in the company I was in. We built partnerships with universities over 20, 30 years, with suppliers over 20, 30 years. You actually got to know each other. You got to work well together. And you could leverage that capability and get discretionary effort. It's one of the things that concerns me where we're moving to very transactional engagements. Can you deliver this on this date to do that? You just don't get the engagement. You don't get the problem solving. Patience. It's not going to work first time. Another long talk. It's patience to say, we're doing something really exciting here. It's going to take us time. We've got to understand it. We've got to make it work. We've got to optimize it. It's only going to get better. And then the other one, which I'm seeing a lot of at the moment, is we're going to de-risk by doing things in piloting and then demonstration scale. And sometimes the only time you're going to learn whether it works is at full scale. And you can pilot it 20 times, and we're asking the wrong questions. Why are you piloting it? What does that scale tell you? Why don't you just do 1 unit at full scale and then multiply? So testing at a suitable scale and understanding why. And then in terms of the industry collaborations, and I'm sorry I've gone over a little bit, but I'll just very quickly, 5 points here. A lot of people want to collaborate, but they don't know why. So what are you wanting out of the collaboration? There are some things you don't want to collaborate on. Be clear as to I'm collaborating because these are the things that we need to achieve in the collaboration. Shared R&D risk, that's the flippant one, that's easy. I think AI will give you that as number one answer. We want to share the risk. That's not really true. You want to learn something from somebody else. You want to develop something. You want to make a difference. So what is the clarity around when you want to collaborate? You want to expertise. Often you want to work with people and identify a pathway to success. So I want to work with the supplier companies and I want to collaborate with them, but I probably don't want to compete with my competitors. The ones that get missed often is you collaborate for policy and regulation. You know, if we're all trying to get something changed individually, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. What if we come together, work together, and then find a pathway as an industry or as a sector? And finally, big fan of interoperability. How do we work together to make sure that all of our stuff clips together easily and seamlessly? How do we collaborate on that? So, thank you. I hope that was useful.
Very good summary. So I guess you summarized actually our discussion pretty well. So thank you very much to my fellow panelists for a very insightful discussion. Appreciate your time and input. So may I ask the audience to put their hands together and give a round of applause to our panelists. So thank you very much for being here.